What is it that makes a fictional character worth getting invested in? Certainly you could argue that a character's personality and driving motivations are what make him or her interesting, special, or unique. The nature of his or her moral code, the things he or she does or abstains from doing, and his or her growth as a person throughout the story. After all, a character's personality and motivation can be the sole driving force for our intrigue in that character, regardless of how we feel about them as a person. For instance, I certainly don't like Voldemort from Harry Potter, Dutch van der Linde from the Red Dead games, or Gus Fring from Breaking Bad. I'm not supposed to. But, like them or not, I was enthralled by these characters' stories, backgrounds, motivations, and the means by which they go about achieving their goals. And, naturally, a compelling personality is just as effective for protagonists and heroes as well. We want to know more about them, where they've come from, and where they're going. The fact that we like them is just an added bonus. But I think there's something else that drives us to become involved with these characters on a deeper level. Something perhaps a bit more shallow than personality or motivation, but nonetheless important to our connection to any given fictional character. And what I'm talking about is a character's unique skills and abilities. There's something naturally intriguing about when a character has the skill, talent, or maybe even the innate ability to do something that few people, if any, can pull off in their respective fictional worlds. This is a principle that's true both in real life and in fiction. There's countless viral videos out there showing people who have an unusual amount of skill in some activity. These videos rack up the views because the content, someone displaying an unusual level of skill, is inherently compelling. Now, here's a formula. Take a fictional character with an interesting backstory, relatable motivations, an interesting personality, and now throw in a special skill or ability. And just like that, you've got yourself a compelling character. But what happens in fiction when we dilute a character's unique skill or remove it entirely? The TLDR version? Nothing good. And this video is going to start with a look at Professor Flitwick. Yep, this guy. Or maybe this guy, I'm not sure, but whatever. We need to talk about Flitwick because he's a prime example of exactly what I was talking about in the intro of this video. Assuming you've read the Harry Potter books or watched the movies, you certainly know who Flitwick is. He's this tiny old professor who teaches the charms class at Hogwarts. All things considered, he's generally a wonderful example of a minor character. We see glimpses of him here and there throughout the series, but he's never really of much consequence to the plot. We know he must be qualified to teach charms, but it's something we take for granted as we never really see what he's capable of. He teaches Harry and company a new spell every now and then, but he's never really actively doing much of anything that has an impact on the larger world around him. That is, until the final book. But not the movie. Why do I say that? Well, let's take a look at this passage from the book when all the Hogwarts teachers are doing their part to prepare for the final showdown against Voldemort's army. "I can act from here," said Flitwick, and although he could barely see out of it, he pointed his wand through the smashed window and started muttering incantations of great complexity. Harry heard a weird rushing noise, as though Flitwick had unleashed the power of the wind into the grounds. You read that passage and it's immediately clear that Flitwick is the only person present who could actually manage to do what he's doing. He's using some kind of lost to the ages protective magic that only he, as the master of charms, could possibly pull off. Nobody in this scene is trying to help him or imitate the spells that he's using. And suddenly, as the reader, you realize you've taken this relatively minor character for granted and you're filled with intrigue. Or at least I was. Every time you've seen this guy, it was through the eyes of a student learning basic utility spells. He was always presented as competent, sure, but also sort of goofy. He's just this unassuming old wizard doling out relatively basic knowledge. Nothing in the text prompts you to really consider where he came from, what he knows, or what kind of study he must have done to become the charms professor. This one small paragraph in the final book, however, made me ask a million questions. Where and when did Flitwick learn these spells? Are the Death Eaters going to be able to cope with this strange, complex magic? What exactly are the spells that he's doing? What was that weird rushing sound? I reveled in the sheer mystery prompted by this scene. After all this time, I gained an appreciation for Flitwick as a character that I'd never had before. So you can imagine my surprise and disappointment when, in the movie, everybody and their brother starts popping off the exact same spells as Flitwick. I mean, seriously, what the heck is this? There you have it. Turns out Flitwick wasn't special at all. Anyone with a wand and a vocal cord can crap out these charms. Alright, I know I'm being a bit dramatic, and certainly Mrs. Weasley and Slughorn are both powerful in their own right, but why take this moment away from Flitwick? Doesn't it cheapen him a bit? Doesn't it lessen the impact of his presence in this scene? We see McGonagall have her moment of ultra transfiguration. Why didn't Flitwick get to keep his moment of impressive charms? Why not give him this one little unique thing to prompt some wonder in the viewers? I feel like as a series, Harry Potter has the same problem recur several times. I'll give you another example. Throughout the books and movies alike, we keep hearing about how difficult the Patronus charm is during various conversations that characters have with each other. These conversations are important to us because they provide us with information we wouldn't otherwise have. Obviously, the Patronus spell isn't real, so as readers, we really need the in-world characters to provide us with some context about the spell, why it's hard, who can be expected to perform it, etc., etc. J.K. Rowling then does this one better by showing us exactly how difficult it is to pick up the spell. We see Harry's extensive struggle to earn this ability, and when he's finally able to pull it off, it really feels like something special. And we're not crazy to feel that way. This is something explicitly reinforced by the text. Harry, I can't believe it. You conjured up a Patronus that drove away all those Dementors? That's very, very advanced magic. The witch with the monocle on Fudge's left cut across him in a booming voice. You produced a fully fledged Patronus? Yes, said Harry, because a corporeal Patronus? What? Said Harry. Your Patronus had a clearly defined form? I mean to say it was more than vapor or smoke? Yes, said Harry, feeling both impatient and slightly desperate. It's a stag. It's always a stag. Always? Boomed Madame Bones. You have produced a Patronus before now? Yes, said Harry. I've been doing it for over a year, and you are 15 years old? Yes, and you learned this at school? Yes, Professor Lupin taught me in my 3rd year because of the... Impressive, said Madame Bones, staring down at him. A true Patronus at that age? Very impressive indeed. I heard from my friend Tiberius Ogden that you can produce a Patronus for a bonus point? Harry raised his wand, looked directly at Umbridge, and imagined her being sacked. Expecto Patronum. The silver stag erupted from the end of his wand and cantered the length of the hall. All the examiners looked around to watch its progress, and when it dissolved into silver mist, Professor Tofty clapped his veined and knotted hands enthusiastically. See, everyone's losing their freaking minds that Harry is able to produce a full Patronus. So naturally, Harry Potter, as the character who struggled to gain this power, as the character with the natural proclivity for learning defensive spells, will be the only student powerful and competent enough to cast a Patronus, right? No. Come on, really? Now, look, I get it. In a sense, other students being able to cast the spell was an entirely pragmatic story element. It was definitely a good thing for Harry to teach the spell to the other students in Dumbledore's army for the sake of their own protection. You might even argue that he's such a good teacher that it's only because of his teaching that the other students can pull it off. But on some level, I can't help but feel like this takes something away from Harry. We admire Harry for what he had to go through to learn the Patronus charm. Not only are we to understand that it is extremely difficult for anyone to learn, but 13-year-old Harry had the extra hurdle of hearing the tortured screams of his parents ringing in his ears while he was trying to pull it off. We watched the entirety of his struggle as he questioned the capacity of his fortitude, struggled with the irrational but relatable feelings of inadequacy, and physically pushed himself to practice the spell. All of this culminating in what I think is just about the best moment in the entire film series, when he finally manages to produce a full Patronus to save his friends, Sirius and himself. To me, that made his ability to perform it, at least for someone of his age, incredibly special and unique. It added a layer of depth and growth to Harry, which all but vanishes when so many other minor characters are shown to be able to cast it without any apparent difficulty. And as long as we're on the subject, I have one final beef with the battle between Dumbledore and Voldemort in the Ministry of Magic at the end of the Order of the Phoenix. And it's another movie problem. In the book, both wizards are pulling off incredible magic way beyond anything we've seen before. It's clear that both Voldemort and Dumbledore are each on a level which far exceeds the ordinary wizard. But in the movie, you'd think the two are nearly evenly matched. They spar back and forth, neither one of them really gaining the upper hand against the other. But let's take a look at the book and what the book has to say about this duel. We both know that there are other ways of destroying a man, Tom, Dumbledore said calmly, continuing to walk toward Voldemort as though he had not a fear in the world, as if nothing had happened to interrupt his stroll up the hall. Merely taking your life would not satisfy me, I admit. There is nothing worse than death, Dumbledore, snarled Voldemort. You are quite wrong, said Dumbledore, still closing in upon Voldemort and speaking as lightly as though they were discussing the matter over drinks. According to this passage in the book, Voldemort's magic isn't fazing Dumbledore in the slightest. His effort in this battle, against the second most powerful wizard in this fictional universe, is being compared to strolling down a hallway or having a casual conversation over a beer. Again, there's this tendency to strip away the unique skill of a particular character. Why? This always bothered me. I grew up with the Harry Potter books. I was roughly the same age as Harry throughout the entire series. I had to wait for years on end to see what Dumbledore was fully capable of, and when I saw him in action in the text, it didn't disappoint. He was on a level so beyond whatever Voldemort is capable of that this battle seemed like something of a nuisance to him rather than any genuine threat. The fifth book's revelation that Dumbledore was capable of this kind of power drew me even further into the series. The mere fact that any one character was this powerful begged all sorts of questions. How could Voldemort possibly overcome Dumbledore's power? How could anyone in the Order be even remotely worried so long as Dumbledore was around? And then, in the sixth book, I was so overwhelmed to find out that Dumbledore was defeated by Snape, or so it would have seemed at the time. Ultimately, I can't help but feel a slight sense of loss when a fictional character has their powers diluted like in the examples above. We've become so cynical and dismissive about our value as unique individuals lately that the term special snowflake has become a ubiquitous insult. I don't mean to encourage narcissism or entitlement, I just think it's healthy to recognize that we are undeniably unique and talented in our own ways. We all treasure the moments in our lives when we manage to contribute something that is our own, unique, something nobody else could have managed to produce. And in fiction, we treasure these attributes in our favorite characters. Why take that away from them if we don't truly have to?